Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ask the Right Questions. I am Slim Jim, and over there is Race the Raposa with his cup of coffee.
hmm
Is it Alex Jones coffee?
It is. It is actually.
I guessed right.
Um,
So, what
all right.
what kind is it? Is it a Patriot blend or is it the what's the other one? It's your immune system. The immune system
Yes, it's the
blend.
immune system one. Yep. Might as well get that one.
All right, and today we're going to talk about something that Race has been pondering ever since I first met him in high school. It's
That's
bothered.
my crackpot theory about culture.
It's my. So tell him why.
Okay, I'm
Because
ready
how
for
long? How long does a decade's identity run? Ray says the first half of a decade doesn't count.
my crackpot theory. It's funny when I first sent James all these things, he was like, "The way you have your decade set up is retarded."
And it still is. Because I already proved you wrong while sitting here 5 minutes ago before we started.
You proved some things wrong.
I proved it all wrong.
Okay, I just think it's extremely interesting that there are big cultural art changes in the middle of the decade rather than on the decade.
I proved you it happened in the first
And
year.
so and so there are there's like eras in between the eras. So instead of it just being like 1940 to 1950, not all the biggest changes happen on the 50. They happen on 55. They happen in 45. Now I haven't like 100% proven this yet. I just started doing uh, the first few hours of research into this. But I remember in high school we were talking about cartoons, how it kind of seemed like they were changing in between. It's like the late 30s. Um, I think 38 is the first um, Steamboat Willie cartoon, or is it 28? Um,
It's in the 20s. It's 1928 is Steamboat Willie.
okay. Um, and there's also like political changes that like we talked about. Our first show was about how politics affect everything, and politics definitely affects art, political art, music. um the things that are happening in the world affect the artists, so it's going to affect um the art that comes out. And sometimes those political changes happen in between the decades. So I'll just it'd be cool to write a book on this and just start going through all the examples of like when things happen on the decade and when they don't. But this is just a few things. This is just a few little things that I.
Well, we're going to talk about what we actually know, which is animation and music.
Yeah, we'll talk about animation music. I'll go quick through my notes and then you can add the caveats to them and all that. So, I mean, one of the things is like the beginning of television, like it's being developed all throughout the 20s. The first station is aired in 28. The first one of the first TVs was made in 26.
Well,
Um,
TV wasn't common until the early 50s
mhm.
or even mid 50s probably is when it actually got common.
But you could say TV starts getting the ball rolling in 25. So that's a shift in the middle of the 20s.
Well, how much did it affect though? How many people had a TV?
I couldn't find that particular fact.
Because my dad tells me how his family got the first TV in the mid 50s. And
That okay.
it wasn't common then either. His dad ran out and bought it as soon as he could.
Yeah, that's when it. Yeah, I think that's when it was like the first commercial. Um, when it got big commercially, like when it was affordable and all that. But again, this is just a few hours of research. 19. I'll start 1915, 1925. World War I begins in 1914, and then it ends in 1918. So it's not that long, but the effects linger for a while. And then in 1923, Coolidge becomes president, and he's kind of there for the rest of the decade for most of the 20s. So that's a pretty big shift happening near the middle of the decade. It's most of the silent film era is there too. Like the
Yeah,
first few films come out in the late 19 teens and then into the 1920s. The first talkie is in 27. So
yeah.
that's when they start declining is in 27. So
Well, yeah, it happened fast. It was slower in Japan, the shift to sound.
yeah, that's true. Um, Rubber Hose Animation 2 begins kind of in like the late 20s, and it kind of has some of the best cartoons in the early 30s in 1935.
Yeah, for me personally, I mean, I would say the golden age started in, um, just before 35. You know,
Hmm.
mid 30s for sure.
Yeah. Um,
Well, the 40s is considered the golden age.
right. And here on Wikipedia it says 33 to 36 is like when Looney Tunes begins, and they start creating a lot of characters.
That
The
yeah.
1930 to 33 is a Harmon and Ising era, and that's with Bosco and all the rubber hose
Well,
stuff that they did.
the Looney Tunes name wasn't till when was the first one with the name Looney Tunes on it? It's
Mm, I don't know. I
it's
think
okay. Yeah,
it's the
35.
talking kid, Bosco the
Oh,
talking kid.
and what year? Oh, that's 29. Yeah, I thought so. I thought it started before the 30s.
The first Looney Tunes Sinking in the Bathtub was 1930.
Bosco the Talk Inc. Kid was 29 though.
Yes.
Did it have the name Looney Tunes on it?
No, that was kind of
It
like a
didn't.
pilot.
Okay. No, it didn't. Okay.
Yeah.
The first character, though, I mean, however you want to cut it, I guess.
Right, right. So the Looney Tunes does begin in like 1930,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
then here on Wikipedia it says 36 to 44. Most of the You have most of the characters being made. Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Porky Pig.
Yeah, all the major characters appeared.
Yeah, Elmer Fudd is in there.
Porky Pig is 35. It happened fast. I mean, all of them just kind of fell out at this, within a few years.
Right, and then 1944 to 64 is considered the golden age. So again, that's happening right in the middle of the decades.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Well, you can say the big ones. I think more about style. I don't know. I just think more about the identity. The styles happen. I mean, the big stuff comes out.
Well, I think that's
Uh,
the style starts to shift in the late 30s, and then it fully transitions in the mid 40s, and so it starts around 1935, and then it shifts into its best years in 1945.
the 30s and the 40s, like I was talking about the music earlier, they are similar.
Oh,
They are
oh,
quite
music.
similar. Well. I'm speaking in my generalities. So the animation shifted slowly, right?
Hmm.
Style's pretty similar, right?
Yeah.
Style's pretty similar. The musical style is pretty similar too. Let me get the browser. With jazz and swing were the most
Big
popular
band.
stuff, and also yeah, jazz, big band, swing, bebop, and also the beginning of traditional pop happened in the 30s and 40s.
Okay. Yeah.
And then but then in 40 and 40 and if 46 is Frank Sinatra, so that's a but it's not really a huge shift in pop.
No.
The sound changed a lot more due to recording technology getting better. And you see with animation too. I mean, technology got a lot better, right?
Yeah.
With cameras, color came in. So you are correct about there being a shift in the mid 40s because of technology.
Yeah. Yeah, the art, yeah, art definitely shifts with the technology. It's also World War II is um World War II is 39 to 45. And like if you like
Oh
again
well,
if you go
yeah, the war ended too. The war caused a
yeah.
big difference because of budget.
Yeah, so a lot of the studios were making war cartoons, like war propaganda, and that all ends in 45 when the
Honestly,
war ends.
them having to make the war propaganda always makes me sad because it's just stopped a lot of great cartoons from happening. Probably
Yeah, yeah. I mean, now we have footage of
there was a couple. There was a couple that, from the perspective of entertainment, were pretty good. There was the one with Bugs Bunny and Hitler, and there's also one with Daffy too, where there's a spy coming after him. You know, a sexy woman spy.
well,
That was made by Frank Tashlin.
how many times does Donald Duck say Heil Hitler in
Oh
that
well,
cartoon?
yeah. Well,
Like
he says it a
like a
lot,
hundred times.
but that's the point of the cartoon.
I
That's the
know, I
point.
know. It's just weird. It's just a weird piece of history that we even have that.
That one's an entertaining one. I'd put that in with the other two that I talked about. Were actually entertaining cartoons rather than just being pure propaganda.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, everyone's home by the mid 40s. So that's kind of that's when all the baby boomers are born. So that's
That
kind of that's
that's when they start being born. The baby boom lasts a long time.
yeah.
It
Uh,
lasts till 60, really, 1960.
um,
Because my dad is one,
when
and he was born in the mid 50s, the later mid 50s.
and you could say too that there's still a lot of fear going on even after World War II. So that's kind of the beginning of the Cold War, right?
Um, I don't know when the Cold War. I mean, I'm not alive then, so I can't really say when you would feel it start. They say Wikipedia says it started in 46.
Okay, yeah. So I
Now
found an
that's certainly
article.
fast.
Hmm.
Though from the way I don't know, from the way my dad taught, I don't. But the Cold War is famous in what, the 70s and 80s, right?
It kind of lingers on for a long time. I mean,
Well, I'm saying
you
when it's
could.
felt. I mean, when it was felt is when my brother was a kid, and he was born in the 70s.
Oh yeah, you could say. I mean, you could technically say that. Sometimes you could say like that World War One and World War Two are kind of the same war, and you could even say that North Korea is left over is like still part of the Cold War
Yeah. Oh,
against
definitely.
communism and all that.
Well, yeah. Well, definitely. Well, that's why they say the Korean War never ended.
Yeah. Um, but I found an article um, by The Nation, and it's a guy talking about the fear of nuclear bombs in 1945. So, so that's kind of the new, again, that's big cultural changes happening in the middle of the decade. Um, and then,
There is a very good reason for that. It's because the war ended, and technology boomed because I mean it was being held back by resources being gone,
yeah.
being taken.
Hmm. But then, like, and then people like are just getting their footing kind of after the war, and the 50s begins, and so there is kind of like a 10-year period there from 45 to 55 where things are kind of settling in and changing. And then in 1955 is the beginning of the civil rights era.
And rock
So
and
that
roll.
and rock, yeah. So this is like the Vietnam War begins in 55 and it goes on till 75. Um, and then yeah, this is the era of classic rock and roll, rhythm and blues. The
But what
uh
is interesting about back then?
this is somebody's paper.
Is
It,
the shifts aren't as violent like Rock and Roll starts with Bill Haley. It starts
um,
with Bill Haley and Buddy Holly,
mhm.
and but the thing is the 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 crooners don't disappear. You know what I mean? The pop music. You know, like Frank
Yeah,
Sinatra. It doesn't just up and disappear. It still stays there, and it still makes plenty of stuff. Hell, Bobby Darin joined during rock and roll.
oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
He's very similar to Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin.
Well, it's just like, well, at Stonehill College, what I found this class that's called Chuck Berry's America, and it's the United States from 55 to 65.
Yeah. So how about animation? Now the 50s flat animation started right in 1950
Yeah, so the
with UPA
animation,
with
right, and then
UPA.
and Hanna-Barbera starts then too.
General McBoing Boing was 1950 right there at the beginning, and look at that right there. That is 50s animation.
Yeah. It's well, and the old style of animation is kind of ending, which is
Yeah.
sad. That's some of
Warner Brothers kept it going. So did Disney. It was traditional
what do you mean?
animation still happening. I mean, Foghorn Leghorn was going on.
Uh,
So was Wile E. Coyote. Only started in '49.
yeah, I guess I mean everything's getting more stiff.
It did kind of start, but
The design is getting better though. They're getting better in other ways. The
that
colors,
is
the
true.
the composition, the shapes.
Robert McKimson never changed. He never changed.
Yeah.
Well, neither did Hanna and Barbera making those Tom and Jerry cartoons.
Hmm.
They never changed either. Tex Avery didn't change either over at MGM. MGM as a whole never got into the 50s stuff, 50s style much.
No, it didn't. No.
He did somewhat. He updated his style with Droopy. You could see it. It's stylized, but
Were
it
those
was kind of
going on
flat.
still?
Yeah,
Were those
they
still
were. Yeah, they were still
okay? So that
happening.
is okay.
That's why I say Tex Avery updated his style somewhat. He got thicker outlines. The character designs became more simplified.
Yeah, yeah.
But they still had depth. They weren't flat.
Right, right. Um, okay. So animation is more kind of sometimes it's going in between, sometimes it's going right on the decade. There's
Yeah.
still
But then of course the 60s, 70s, and 80s was just hell for animation.
I don't think
It
oh
was
for
pretty bad.
animation. Oh
No, for
yes.
animation it was bad. Those were
Oh
dark ages.
yeah.
All you had was Ralph Bakshi desperately trying to make something different.
Yeah, it's a wasteland.
He desperately tried to get some budget. Well, there was a little bit. What is it? What is it? Nim, the mouse.
Well, some of
Can't remember his
the
damn name.
you mean the Don Bluth movies?
Yeah, yeah. His stuff was good. His stuff was good. Good animation.
Yeah, there's still some there's like Oliver and Company.
Yeah. Well, I'm
There's
not going to
still
try and say they were great. They were great to watch. I mean, they were doing Disney when Disney wasn't doing it. Is
well
what they
there
were
was
doing.
the 101 Dalmatians is the 70s. I mean,
That is,
Disney was
I
still
do.
putting out good
Well,
animation, but
John K. rags on the Taiwan Dalmatians, but I actually really like the Xerox lines. I do.
yeah,
I like it. It's not scratchy looking. It looks very organic, I think.
it's kind of it's got the feel of that. Like you can tell there's influence from UPA
Yeah, I actually do like
in the
I
50s.
actually do like the color palette too. It's very I don't he says it looks poopy, like poop was thrown on the screen. Like they're painting with poop. But I think that it looked I actually like the very natural earthy
Well,
look of it. I
isn't there a
do.
lot of isn't there a lot of brown and green?
Yeah, but that's why I say it. Between the Xerox lines and the colors, I think it looks very earthy.
Yeah, yeah, it's fine.
John K said it looks like poop. I think it looks like nature.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, well, that's John Kay. Um,
He only likes one thing. He likes the
yeah,
golden age, and that's it.
right. Um,
Okay, so what are you
I'll,
heading into? Got the 50s. Are the 50s covered? What about movies, Rafe?
so
Movies.
I got well. Okay, so 65 to 75 is the next decade, and
Okay,
I
okay, well,
found
I'm going to talk about the early 60s. The early 60s is when Motown first came along.
yes, yes.
Motown is is the evolution of jazz and swing, really.
Mm-hmm.
It is. It's the
Yeah,
evolution of jazz and swing.
yeah, yeah. So there's that. Yeah, definitely.
See, so
Um,
Motown Records started in 59.
okay.
You can see that. So I can say that side of music started early in the 60s. That side of 60s music started early.
Yep.
But then you
Yep.
got the hard rock side,
Mm-hmm.
which started, which pretty much you could say started 64, 65. Let me pull up my list, make sure I talk about it right. You could say it. See, the Beatles 1964, I Want to Hold Your Hand. That's still the first decade of rock.
Oh, there you go.
Well,
Yeah.
in the sound, in the sound.
Yeah. 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 Um,
But but
yeah.
but then you have 66 with Good Vibrations, which is, hey, you're starting into the psychedelic kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
Vibrations is getting there. Rolling Stones 65 with Satisfaction. You consider that the beginning of hard rock. A lot of people do. That
Uh-huh.
song. It had a harder sound.
The Beach Boys too are early '60s
Yeah,
throughout.
yeah. The Beach Boys start there. The Beach Boys do start there. The song Good Vibrations got psychedelic though. 66.
Hmm. Um,
Um,
yeah, I found a post randomly on IGN. Someone talking about 65 to 75 as the best 10-year stretch in rock and roll history, and they name Beatles, Led Zeppelin, Rolling Stones, Jimi Hendrix, Bob
and
Dylan,
then
The
and then
Doors.
and then since we everybody will say it, Sergeant Pepper was 67.
Right.
And then Hey Jude was a big hit off that.
But that's what started this whole kind of conversation, right? Because even you had to remind me a lot that like we defined the 60s by the very end of the decade.
That one we do. That one we do. But I did want to note that Motown shifted earlier, and Motown is thought of as 60s.
Yeah.
So that
Well, I
side of it
kind of
shifted.
yeah, but I kind of think when I think Motown, I kind of think like the 50s a bit
It
too.
has that sound. Well, it's totally understandable because it's the evolution
Yeah.
of the big band and swing. Which, but you know that all started in the 40s.
Right, I know. But well, and then we see in the early 70s too the shift from Motown to funk.
So as for this, Jimi Hendrix, Are You Experienced is 1967.
Well, isn't
Not
is my
67.
the Summer of Love is 69, right? Or 60.
Woodstock is 69. So yeah.
But well, Monterey Pop is uh
So well, the hard rock side of it, which is what a lot of people think about. I just want to note it down how late it was. Okay, Cream was 66. Jimi Hendrix is 67 when they started, got their
yeah.
first albums out.
Monterey Pop was 68.
That was, yeah, that's when Jimi Hendrix came to America and got big.
And that I think that is the Summer of Love. I think that's what defined it.
Well, I don't know.
The Summer of Love was 67.
Summer Love. Well, Woods. Yeah, well, I typically think of Woodstock,
And
but
this is I believe this is the baby boomers coming of age. So this
they
is a
were, yes,
huge
yes. This is when the boomers came in and started ruining our lives.
Yes. This is when they drop the ball.
But they
Um
had some good music at least.
yeah, now
We're going to give
now
you the
yeah.
greatest music, but we're going to take away your lives.
Yes, we're gonna steal all your money with Social Security as a Ponzi scheme. Uh, Now I do remember there is a documentary called '69, the year that changed everything, and I believe that's when JFK dies.
So
So
65 is when politically things started to shift.
things shift 65 and then they really shift in 69 and then it's the beginning of like America, kind of America's downfall,
Well,
just in
65,
almost every way.
65 is when they signed the immigration bill to start letting everybody in.
Yeah. Um, it's Vietnam War starts
Yes.
too. Or it starts getting really bad. People start the draft is happening.
Well,
I
that side of it's not bad. I don't know. I don't want to get into the politics, but you know, the whole musical thing wasn't a coincidence either.
What do you mean?
Well, I sent you. God, for some reason, my memory is terrible today. But David Icke, remember the video I sent you where he talked about the '60s and how like
Hmm.
all those big rock bands, the most of them, particularly the Doors, they all had ties to the government and family.
Oh, well, no, well, yeah, he's probably talking about like the CIA and putting drugs into the population. I mean, there were
Yeah,
CIA, there were LSD was being developed a long time ago, and then they started kind of introducing psychedelics to the masses, and that obviously influenced the music. I mean, we
yeah.
call it psychedelic.
All of it
So,
wasn't a coincidence, is
no,
all I'm saying.
no, that's yeah. There's
But
like
I don't want to I don't want to make this into a downer episode.
every band is idolizing Aleister Crowley, not someone you want to idolize. Even the Beatles, he's on the Sgt. Pepper
What's
album cover.
surprising is that Hendrix was actually quite a conservative guy overall, but he came from Britain,
Yeah,
so it was he didn't have he wasn't influenced by the American politics as much.
yeah. Then, well, there's a lot going on at the end of the '60s.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on in a short
Oh, it
period
is.
of
It
time.
is. That's a lot to get into.
I found one.
What about
Um,
movies? What about movies in the '60s, Race?
I
What was
see.
that like?
It's not considered a super good decade for movies.
What is it?
I,
But I
I don't.
mean, the
I don't
only
think.
reason
I don't. Go ahead.
only people think of Easy Rider is because of the music. It's a crappy movie to watch. It's a boring movie.
Yeah, I don't think color films look that good in that era either.
Well, I guess I'll throw them those magnificent men and their flying machines. I like. It was actually a good decade for westerns.
Yeah, I guess
It's
so.
a good decade for westerns.
I mean, I like darker, serious movies, I guess. So I do love a lot of the movies in the '70s. That's when the first, like George Lucas, Francis Ford Coppola, Steven Spielberg, they all start making movies, and they're the first to study like the first era of films, and they're the first like
Yeah.
film school students. So
The '60s is a good decade for westerns. So I'll
yeah,
give them that.
I think too, theaters start going down and like there's like a crisis because TV's getting bigger.
Well, they panicked. Yeah,
Yeah,
they panicked.
so movies are kind of that I would say that's one of the lesser eras for movies.
No,
I
maybe that's not even true because Rio Bravo is '59, and that's what I was thinking about with Great Westerns. So, but there is some in the '60s.
Yeah, there's some I don't know American movies. There's like goofy, like just like I don't know. Technicolor wasn't looking too good in my opinion.
I happen to like Goofy because I am a goofy guy.
That's true. That's true.
I like Goofy. Horror didn't have much
Um,
going on either. Well, the Hammer films were they then? I gotta check my logs. No,
you're kind of losing. I think film is so obsessed with color that you're losing a lot of
well,
the.
how about this one? It's a Mad World, '63. That's a good one. Last Man on Earth is '64, but nobody cares about that except for me and James Rolfe. It's an important film to us.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think movies look that good from
'70s
that
movies
era.
are the ones that I don't like. Well, so how about we shift it to the '70s? Let's shift.
I
Let's
think
shift.
let's shift.
Let's shift.
I was just gonna mention there is a this is an exhibit, American art and the Vietnam War, 65 to 75. So someone
It
thought
was
that was an era.
well, it was '65 to '69 is its own era, which as we kind of defined. In a lot of ways, it was.
Yeah.
And then I mean, it stops at 1972 because Cream breaks up in '69, Hendrix dies in '70, and Woodstock happened in '69. Woodstock's thought of as the end of it, so there you go. 65, 69 is its own era. 5 years.
Uh, I, uh, I guess. I mean, there's still a lot of stuff that happens in the early 70s, though. There isn't Black Sabbath early 70s?
Yeah, well, we're gonna talk. Well, I'm gonna get into that.
I mean, Led Zeppelin.
Well, Led Zeppelin is a leftover from this. Led Zeppelin opened for all these big bands we talk about in the late '60s. This is how they started.
And then they get big in the early 70s.
Then they get big in the '70s because, like I
So,
said, a lot of the other bands broke up or died.
but well, yeah, but but the 60s sound, the all the creativity that happened in the late 60s is still lingering on in the early
Not
70s.
much, not much. I mean, there's Deep Purple, who was around in the late '60s. They're one of those few hard rock bands that survived into the '70s. They didn't break
Hmm.
up or drop dead.
Well, I do remember my dad did say that 70s was people thought rock and roll was dead. '70s because of
It's a
disco.
strange error. So it's not going to be as strange for those in Europe because punk rock got big there. Punk rock didn't get that big in America overall.
Hmm.
It didn't. It didn't get that big. A lot of the bigger bands are like Elton John, which I mean he's like poppy. The
Well,
Rolling Stones kept going.
you could say that punk rock is kind of starting in the 70s, right?
No, but it does. It does. I'm saying it's bigger in Europe. I'm thinking about it from Americans' perspective. Punk rock didn't
Yeah.
get that huge here.
Um.
So in the '70s, but you can so the '70s with this you can see the beginning of metal in the '70s with Motorhead, Black Sabbath. You could even say Deep Purple got into the metal, but Deep Purple was kind of psychedelic. Cause
Velvet Underground was active between 65 and 1973. There you go.
what is that proving?
That's proven my crackpot theory.
It didn't prove anything.
Well, the Velvet Underground is hugely influential
I know,
for punk, for especially for punk rock.
they weren't mainstream.
Yeah, but I mean for punk rock.
Yeah, sure, I know. It's after the fact. It's kind of like talking about the Sonics. Nobody gave a shit about them when they were around.
A lot of artists gave a crap and they started bands because of it, and that
Yeah,
started the next
yeah, but
era of music. So,
we're talking about a decade's identity.
well, yeah, I guess. I mean, yeah, I guess that's true.
We're talking about the identity of the decade. So the thing is, when you say '70s, people are thinking about big afros, white suits, bell bottoms, and
Bell bottom.
and disco music. Overall, it was very much a flash in as far as being mainstream. Because I talked to my dad about it, because I couldn't really find much about it online. Because after the '70s came and went, everybody hated it and stored it away and don't want to talk about it. You know what I mean? It's true.
Yeah,
The '70s never made a comeback.
I
Every
mean,
other decade
yeah.
has.
I think the disco sound is kind of making a comeback in
It, it,
vaporwave,
it,
but
it is with new disco. There is some new disco artists who are electronic, and they got some of the disco sound in it. But I'm
yeah,
not talking about like mainstream coming back. Like '50s came back, '60s came back, '80s is now back, and '90s is coming back.
yeah.
But they skipped the '70s because they hate it for some reason. The only people
Well,
to hark back to it is Barry Bear and the Angry Beavers.
now the could we? But we couldn't really say that funk existed in the '60s, right?
No, it didn't. Funk came in. I was about to talk about this, so thank you, Rach, giving me my segue. Parliament, and Funkadelic were '70s. They were straight
and
'70s.
and funk is a huge amazing, incredible musical innovation.
It is. It's
It, it's
funk
it's the
music.
evolution of Motown.
Funk music could bring peace to the world.
Yes.
It's the evolution
The-
of Motown and psychedelic.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Uh,
Like Otis Redding is right kind of in the middle
this
there.
is also kind of underground. So from the American perspective, because I know in Europe punk music was huge. It was getting huge already in the 70s, from what I understand.
Hmm.
Here we had Queen, we had Steve Miller Band, we had T-Rex, Elton
Okay.
John. The
Yeah.
Rolling Stones continued through it. They're
So
bluesy rock.
so everything's kind of mixing together.
It did. It's kind of like everybody got into their own little clique and
So
hid away. You had
there's a
the
good
Eagles.
there's a good event in it that isn't. I mean,
All of that
Queen would
has a
be
similar
considered
sound.
stadium rock.
Yeah, but all this kind of has a similar sound. It's a very poppy sound, a very mainstream poppy sound.
Hmm.
Steve Miller Band is the Eagles, Elton John. I mean, yeah, it's all very mainstream pop stuff. Neil Young, the Village People, right in the big disco song, which was the Bee Gees, who weren't a disco band at all. They were hired to do the soundtrack to Saturday Night Live, and that's Saturday Night Fever. Then
Yeah.
everybody remembers them for that. But
So that's a pretty good amount of innovation,
it is a
though.
lot of there's a lot of innovation. It was a big. It was they were experimenting, really.
So, and there's a lot of music that we still don't like. I guess for music in general, people don't want to forget about the 70s that much.
In a lot in ways, yeah. So we kind of got your own clique. You had metal starting with Motorhead and Black Sabbath. You had funk with Parliament and the and Funkadelic.
And
And I don't know, was it hip hop? Electronic music started through disco in the 70s.
mhm.
That's when electronic music started. If you hear it in the funk a lot, they have electronic sounds mixed in.
Yeah, and funk. I mean, disco is kind of the bed for hip hop
So
too.
so so it's kind so it was very experimental era, you could say, just
Yeah,
under the surface
definitely.
of that pop music.
Um, in my theory here, 75 to 85, not really anything that I can think of that's like,
What, to 85? Well, let's talk about the 80s now. Well, I'm going
well,
to say it right here.
75, if 75, mid 70s to mid 80s, I couldn't find anything special going on.
Well, right here, 79, Heart of Glass by Blondie comes out, which is new wave. And we harken in the 80s race. We say hello to the 80s right in 1980. Hello. Hello, here we
Yeah,
are. It's the 80s.
yes.
And this is when we start getting hair metal, which is a genre I started in as a young lad. I walked into the Vinyl Museum in Clearwater, Florida, and bought Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction in the 90s, just as it was over. I was a young boy and I bought it. But right there in the early 80s, 81, you got Motley Crue coming out with Too Fast for Love, 1981 race. Say hello to hair metal.
Mhm. Yeah,
There you go. Started right in the beginning of the decade. What it's
yeah.
known for. What about hip hop? When did we get our hip hop albums coming out?
I think that's definitely late 80s. That's like very end of the 80s.
I don't even list it
Uh,
on here.
no, I mean, like
Well,
Sugar Hill, Run DMC. That's way at the end.
well, Run DMC. When's their discography? Because 1984 is the first Run DMC album.
Okay, okay. So that's it's definitely not there in the beginning of the 80s, really.
Grandmaster Flash started in the 70s, but I mean he wasn't getting big.
Yeah.
He started in the 70s though. The Wheels of Steel came out in 81 by Grandmaster Flash, which that's an important one. It has Apache, which was a big song. Eighth Wonder.
Okay. Okay, so it is.
Rapper's Delight by Sugar Hill Gang. When was that one?
Okay,
That
so
was
that.
19. It was recorded in 79.
Okay, so that is. Yeah, it
It
is there
started
from the
right
beginning then.
there. It was there. I don't think it got popular for a few years later, but that's beside the point, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's the 80s. What about 80s horror race?
Oh well.
That's
That,
the
yeah,
80s horror started what we know as horror today.
it's yeah, it is. Well, the '70s horror, like the slasher movies, came out in the '70s, and that's when everything started getting really extreme.
Yeah, but I
Uh,
mean the ingredients. Well, you actually didn't talk about your 70s movies, right?
um,
Which would you say is your favorite?
uh, well, I mean, there's Taxi Driver, The Godfather, um, The Conversation. Um,
Wasn't those your favorite Kubrick films?
I believe The Shining is the '70s. Um, I'm sure there's a bunch of other
Oh, okay.
examples. Yeah, I mean, I didn't really think about films that much because I think films pretty much I think they change with the decades. I don't really think they. I mean, there's like sometimes you look at like Raging Bull is right on 1980, but that does not feel like anything like the 80s.
No.
That is like that feels like it was made in like
Now, a lot of my
the
favorite,
fifth the 40s.
a, a, a lot of movies I like, especially comedy wise, came out of the 80s.
Hmm. 80s is much happier. I mean, the '70s is things start to fall apart socially. So
Yeah.
the movies are reflecting that people are more open to
Well,
darker
well,
themes.
the 80s is Ronnie Reagan. You gotta be happy, right?
Yeah. But '80s is just like there's a new era of kids now. The
It was
kids, the
colorful. It was
boomers.
colorful. It was much more colorful.
Yeah, I mean, there's the Goonies.
Well, it's Living Color the show,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
In Living
yeah,
Color.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah, there's the Spielberg.
apparently in Living Color was 1990. That
Oh,
started.
yeah, it is kind of the '90s.
Well, yeah, I don't know. It kind of like it's colorful like the 90s, though. My sister always calls it 80s.
No, it's again, well, that would
It was the
add to my
shift.
thing of '85 to '95 would be kind of its own. It
It
feels
was
like
the
its own
shift.
decade. '85 to '95, I would say that's kind of the beginning of the '90s is kind of the birth of alt rock. But there's some stuff in the beginning, like there's a lot of punk stuff in the '80s and the late '80s that's similar. Uh, the Pixies were formed in '86, and then their first album was in '89, and that kind of changed the sound of alt rock. Well, that
Yeah.
kind of birthed the sound. Um,
90s music I hate. I hate 90s music.
I'm sorry to hear that. Like I just when I think of early '90s too, when I see stuff from like even just like the way TV looks and sometimes the way films looks, still feels like it's kind of in the '80s. Um, I don't really have a lot of examples of that. It's just
Pete
something
and Pete
I've.
is the most 90s show ever, though, Race, and it's 91.
Well, that is definitely a shift.
The most
That is
90s
definitely.
show ever. It is, in my opinion. It has your Pixie sound, too, which was the only decent thing from the 90s in music.
If you say so, I still really love Nirvana and stuff. I mean, a lot of
Grunge was
people.
kind of tolerable.
I've heard a lot of Gen X people. They say they look back on the '90s and like, oh yeah, most of the music's. But
I didn't even like it then, so I was the original hipster. I was listening to hair metal.
I go back and I really like a lot of that stuff. But I did find an article. I read it a long time ago. It's the from the AV Club. It says in 1996, alternative rock died a messy, forgettable death. So that again, middle of the decade, huge shift. Alt rock is either losing the grunge pixie sound that it had, or it's it's changing in. I mean, there's electronic stuff going
However,
on.
90s animation started it
Yes.
started 89 really. It started but it didn't stop until 2001 really.
Yeah.
It started with Tiny Toons, which aired in 1990. This is how I put it anyway. Tiny Toons started in 1990. It's beautiful animation, great animation, and it died with Invader Zim in 2001.
I agree. That is 10 years.
That's
Yes.
10 solid years of great
That
animation.
is of the 90s animation boom is really the not the whole
But look at
90s.
those 90s boys right there, Race 91. Most 90, the most 90s show. Wait, aren't those boys 90s?
Definitely. Um, but definitely like when it comes to like music, you think of a lot of people. I hear a lot of people say over and over again, late 90s, early 2000s, when they talk about music.
I don't know. When I think about 90s music, I think about grunge, and that's really it.
Well,
And
there's
grunge is on the early side.
there's the boy bands too, boy and
Oh
girl
yeah,
bands.
yeah. Well, those started plenty early too.
Yeah, but
And the boy and girl bands weren't gone till after '99.
yeah. Well, even there is kind of a shift in 2000, I guess, too. But like even I was thinking about hip hop and 95. Again, I don't have a list of all the biggest albums, but there's Tribe Called Quest, Tupac, Biggie. There's all the stuff that you think about with 90s hip hop, right? And they're still making albums in the mid 90s. But then in the 2000s, like right in 2000, 2001, there's Lauryn Hill. Outkast is putting out its most creative stuff. And then look, 2003, 4, 5 is Madlib, MF Doom, and Jay Dilla. And that whole sound um, is like in that early 2000s era. So that 95 to 2005, that kind of feels like its own era of hip hop. Um, at least you can take some of the best hip hop ever made and probably get it from that 10-year period in between. Um, then I think this is another
When we
big
get
one
here,
is
so we're coming to 2000, right?
yeah.
Well,
So mid
the
to
absolute worst decade. Right
I'm
there.
saying
2001 is when all of us wanted to stop living. You can see it right there. Linkin Park crawling in my skin is 2001.
yes.
Life wasn't worth living after
No,
2001.
in the end, it didn't even matter.
It doesn't.
Um,
No.
well, the other thing I forgot to mention, uh, there's this article here. This social scientist or whatever, she thinks that there's a Generation K,
Yeah, I'll bring up the article.
um, born between 95 and 2002. I don't know
Wait.
how.
So, since we're touching, I'll just clarify something. We had this discussion a week ago. You
Yeah,
actually identify more with 95 and on.
this
When I
is
started
this is
listing when I started listing my stuff from the 90s, it was all the first half of the 90s.
okay. This is part of my theory. It's part of my experience. Okay, you start really remembering things when you're 5 years old. Would you say 5 years old?
Probably, yeah.
So you don't remember when you're a little baby that much. So the first half of the 90s to me, I was pooping in my diapers and drinking bottles. Then I start to grow up kind of in the mid 90s. And by 2005, I'm in junior high. So for me, that is a 10-year period of all the stuff I liked as a kid, all the cartoons I liked watching.
Yeah.
And a lot of the cartoons that started in the early 90s were still going on, when I
Well,
started
they
watching
were
them.
still on reruns, so yeah, they were still on reruns, and some of them were still getting more seasons.
Right. So I still know all those cartoons that started then, that whole decade. But I also really remember, like, I do remember Lauryn Hill. I do remember all that and all those. R&B is another big era, 90s R&B. I don't know if that started in the mid 90s, but I mean, all that was having all those artists on. Uh,
Yeah.
I like, I remember Shrek, the beginning of the 2000s. Like, I remember Toy Story, the beginning of kind of CG movies, but also still watching a lot of the Disney ones, the Disney traditional 2D animated ones. So, like, there's a shift in between the decades, but to me, that 10 years is not starting on 90 to 2000 or 2000 to 2010, you know?
No, well, it's true. So, but for me, when we discussed it, it was the inverse for me.
Well,
Well, we
well,
discussed what I liked and remember.
well, you're the same age as me though,
I
so
am, but I'm just saying.
this is your 10 years too.
I thought when I thought about everything though, everything I was naming was from the early '90s, right?
Well, so I would name all the same stuff too, but I'm just saying this is the 10 years that you're most aware of what everything that's happening.
Yeah, I'm just
So
saying, but
these are the
why
biggest.
is it why was it like that? Is the
What do you mean? Why
question.
was it like that?
No, but why is it that everything I remembered as the '90s was early '90s, and everything you remembered as the '90s was crawling past 2000?
Um, I don't know. I guess you'd have to give the list. I guess you have to show the difference between lists. Um, I'm just saying we have the same 10 years of experience here.
Yeah.
That's in the middle of the decades, and like like I don't know if like I'm sure high school feels like you're at the last stretch of your public school hell. Um,
Yeah.
like when you go into high school, that kind of feels like a starting different, like a
There is.
starting.
Well, I'll say this. There is a very, very clear divide in my life when the year 2001 comes. I guess
Okay,
somewhat for personal reasons. It's when my entire life fell apart and has never recovered.
okay.
But there's a very, very clear divide right there in my life, as a cultural shift too.
I okay. I mean, I don't. Yeah, I mean, well, the PS2 comes out in 2002. That's what caused
The
that's what
one
caused the end of your life.
the 128-bit era is not 90s. It's its own era. Well, the Dreamcast was 99, but it also died in 2001, so there you go, race.
Okay, but I'm just saying. But there's still, you hear people say all the time, late 90s, early 2000s,
I don't
because
personally.
there's so much spillover.
I don't hear that a lot myself.
Okay, well, somebody listening to this
Well,
will understand.
Pogs were even gone by the year 2000.
Pogs?
Pogs are ultra 90s.
Hmm.
So you can't even call yourself a 90s kid. You don't even know what Pogs are.
No. I mean, no, I don't remember what those are exactly. Maybe if you show me a picture.
They were milk caps.
Um,
They're just these hunks of cardboard with pictures on them, and you would battle with them by flipping them around, and then if you lost, you could take one or more of your opponents.
well, that kind of sounds familiar, I guess. But um, we go into high school in 2006, and that's kind of when you're considered a young adult. So that kind of feels like you're going into a new thing in your life. So that's I guess why that it feels different to me. Like 95 to 2005 was my time as a kid for the most part.
Well,
And
in this article, she says it was affected by the worst recession we've experienced in the West in decades.
okay, so um, 2008 is the recession. It's the end of Bush, the Bush era. That whole 2008 is the Bush era. So that's a big cultural thing going on, where it's cool to be a liberal
Yeah,
and
well,
not cool to be a Republican.
she says here, Generation K has a stunning commitment to social issues. It's
Yeah,
just,
she's talking about social justice warriors, but um, I just thought that was an interesting. It just added to my theory. Um, that's mostly kids, kind
well,
of.
she's saying born between 95 and
Yeah,
2002. You were born before that.
I know, I know. I'm not saying it's me.
Well, it causes
I
you to
mean,
grow up, and it would
I don't.
cause them to grow up in the millennium, essentially.
Right. Yeah. So this would be. So that would be like the K would kind of be like the first. I don't know. Maybe she's just talking about Generation Z. I don't.
Well, being born in 95, between 95 and 2000, would cause you to grow up in the millennium.
Yeah. But we're
Which is a
considered millennials.
which is a very well retconned. We are forever. We were called Generation. Well, at first I was hearing that I was Generation Y when I was really young. Then I was hearing I was Generation Z. Then all of a sudden we're all just grouped into the millennials. People from
I think
1985 are grouped into the millennials. It's ridiculous.
I think Y and millennials are the same generation. I think that's just interchangeable names.
Yeah, then I was yeah I was hearing all kinds of different things. I was hearing Generation Z too when I was young.
Yeah. Well, so K is probably just Z, or it's like somewhere in between Y and Z.
I've never been able to figure it out. Just all of a sudden, people from the '80s too are also millennials. So I don't. So they just grabbed everybody that they could and threw them into that.
If you're a Gen X, you kind of like grew up as a teenager in the 80s, or in the
I
90s too.
guess. Yeah. I was
Um,
I was told I was X. I was told I was Y. I was told I was Z. Then that's just everybody's a millennial.
well, anyways, 2005 is also the beginning of Facebook and YouTube. YouTube begins in 2005 and Facebook begins in 2004.
Yeah, it's when the internet as I knew it ended. Well,
Okay, so
all the normies came, and Eternal September really happened.
okay, so so then that's a big internet shift, right? What would you say is a huge shift?
What I say is the shift happened before that. People really started getting online in
People start getting what?
2001, 2002 is when the internet really started shifting.
Hmm.
It's when but then when YouTube came, I mean the Wild West was really over for the internet.
Yeah, but in high school you were on 4chan a lot, right?
For a year, yeah.
Isn't that have some of its like? Isn't that when memes started?
Yeah, when memes started, yeah.
Okay, so
I get
in between the
in some
decade,
way,
memes
yeah.
start in the middle of the decade. Adds more to my theory.
How is memes a culture? Well, memes isn't its own decade. Memes just change with the era. I mean, there was memes. Before that, there was the hamster dance, the dancing baby. There was Numa Numa, the dramatic gopher. All
Oh,
came before that.
okay, but then there's the type starts happening, right? Like,
But when memes, what do you mean types of memes?
no, I mean like the type on the top and the bottom and the similar font.
You mean image macros?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess yeah yeah there was the advice dog. I don't know. I'm trying to think of when he exactly started. The typing the advice dog was really after. It's when we were just getting out of high school or so. Spread. Yeah,
Destiny's Child
yeah.
says they're gonna.
The first big spread of Advice Dog was 2008.
Okay. Well, Destiny's Child says they're gonna leave in 2005. That's kind of the end of that 90s R&B that I was talking about. Uh,
I wasn't even aware of that. The only time I heard that crap was on really late night on the TV with those album completions.
American Idol was really big in 2005.
You know what I'm talking about, right? Really late at night, you're sleeping. Then you wake up to an R&B completion infomercial blasting you with the spirit of Jesus. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
The only time I ever heard that music. I never heard it any other time.
There was lots of sitcoms I see. I'm just this is what pop culture looked like in 2005 is the article I'm looking at right now.
What about Seinfeld?
There's well, yeah, well that's all throughout the 90s, but
Not 89, so right there, shifted right at the beginning.
yeah, okay, but there is a lot of like this is kind of like the last like TV is still TV and record companies.
So wait, so I want to point out something. We are arguing so much over this because we grew up in it, but every other era we just talked about it as an era.
Yeah, because we weren't there.
You're only sitting. You're only so. But the point was the identity of the era. What is the identity of the 90s?
Well, I would say the cartoons and the
Qua-
television
quality and
defines it the most.
quality animation, Seinfeld, grunge music, and boy bands.
Yeah.
So there you go. So most of that, with the exception of the boy bands, it was all the first half of the 90s.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure the boy bands probably did start then. I, I didn't like them then, and I don't like them now, so I didn't pay much attention to them other than that I always turned off all of that when they started playing.
I mean, I have nostalgia for Hanson, NSYNC, and the Backstreet Boys. Can't deny it.
I don't because I didn't even
I can't deny that I
didn't
still
like them then.
I still like some of those songs.
Okay, listen, they were the annoyance of watching all that. I turned off the show when they started playing.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that you didn't enjoy some of that really good music.
It wasn't good. It was garbage. It was garbage music for the first Soy Boys.
Ooh.
It was. They were the first Soy Boys. There you go, the first Soy Boys.
2005, Green Day won the MTV Award for Boulevard of Broken Dreams. Now that's kind of the I guess
they were playing. They were big long before that.
True, but I guess that's kind of like. I mean, the 2000s is new metal, which we both hate.
Yeah.
Immensely.
The 2000s is just a waste. It's just a big wasteland.
Okay,
other than the GameCube in
I was
the
trying to
120-bit era.
I was trying to prove this theory with animation, and you are definitely correct that it ends with Invader Zim, and then animation in the 2000s just gets worse and worse. Every new show.
I remember when we were looking at 99, you could already see it happening.
Yeah.
You could already see it happening. There was some garbage stuff, like that Sabrina animated show. Terrible.
Literally almost every new show in the 2000s is unbelievably forgettable.
I mean, the Invader Zim was an exception, really.
Like in the early 2000s, there's stuff that I like. There's Sheep in the Big City. There's Time Squad. There's
Time Squad's good.
Yeah,
Sheep in the Big City is kind of weird. I do have a memory of it because it's weird.
Yeah, there's Robot Jones. There's some decent stuff.
I mean, the one big thing was Avatar: The Last Airbender in 2008. However, that's an exception. I mean, there is no other show on American TV that got made like it that's animated.
Oh yeah,
it's an exception.
That's
true. It's one of a kind as far as American animation goes on TV.
Megas XLR is also early 2000.
Yeah,
That's the
I never
only.
liked it much.
Oh, okay, I really like that show. That's the only other one that.
It wasn't badly animated. No, I don't know. I never paid attention to it.
Adult Swim, the golden age of Adult Swim is 95 to 2005. That's when all their biggest shows happen.
Well, that's when
2000,
the
2001 is when all the Adult Swim originals,
what about
Sea Lab,
Toonami?
Aqua Teen Hunger Force, all that starts in the early
What about
2000s.
Toonami? Toonami was 97. It started.
Okay, well, we didn't even talk about anime yet, but I'll just finish. Let me finish up my notes and we can go into anime. So again, I do think there's a big shift in 2005. I think the biggest shift is we're going into YouTube and we're going into the internet and things are starting to enter in. Like, this is going to be the future.
What
Like, I
about
think it's.
Linkin Park's 2001? So there's your edgy stuff already started.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
started as soon as life wasn't worth living. They timed it right.
But but yeah, like the YouTube generation starts, and like I think you can talk about like G4, Tech TV, um,
YouTube was there. I
record.
don't think people watched a ton of it until 2009, 2010.
Right, but people still aren't really using the internet, and we're
What,
still in the middle
today?
of the decade. No,
Oh,
there's
then, yeah. I don't know why I thought now, but
the internet isn't as.
no, it wasn't that big. But I mean, I was on the internet in the 90s, so I can say that the shift started happening in 2001, 2002.
But you can, but just like think about in a like popular culture, like there's still the gatekeepers are
No,
still in full control.
it wasn't important to culture until the middle of our high school.
Yeah, right. My point is that in the mid 2000s, which is it's still really weird to think about that. That's like almost 15 years ago, but like
Well, because then.
there's still the gatekeepers of record companies and television.
Well, I know.
And
Digital music didn't become important until we were leaving high school,
yeah,
2009.
no, but well, I got Napster in the beginning of high school.
You did. You were an early adopter of it.
Okay.
That's why Napster was a pretty unique thing. I mean, I was on the first version of Napster and LimeWire stealing music. So
Yeah.
so you called that's the real first generation of digital music.
True, true.
But
Yeah.
you were like the first adopter of it in a mainstream way.
Okay. So, and that's
Really,
yeah, that's when I
that was the first version of that was the first version of streaming music almost. What you were doing.
yeah.
Because you were essentially borrowing the music. I don't know how to put it like you were renting the music, right? In a way.
Yeah, and
Best
I'm
way to put
still
it.
I still have the same account
There you
from
go.
Napster.
Very
Um
important.
yeah. So, and that's when I started listening to that's when I started getting into garage rock and music and all that. That's garage rock is in that whole 2000s era.
So we're able to hyperanalyze it again. So we define what the 90s looked like. So what did 2000 to 2010 look like? Looking back, what did it look like?
For animation, it was the beginning of the CG
There
era.
actually is quite a divide in video gaming in that era, I will say that. There's the 128-bit era, which is the greatest era of 3D gaming. Then we shift into the Xbox 360, where they're starting to where we have overpriced horse armor, and they start cutting up video games to sell to you piece by piece.
So we do have a generation shift right in the middle.
That happened in the
And
90s too, in a way, 16-bit era, 64-bit era.
yeah,
It's because gaming as a technology was rapidly evolving throughout
yeah, and
those
it
two
just
decades.
yeah, and it just so happened that they're changing in between the eras. So eras of gaming are happening in between. They're not happening right
Eras
on.
of gaming is unique because it's such a because it was such a rapidly evolving technology. It's slower now, way slower.
That's true. That's true. Um,
It's because it just rapidly evolved. Well, because in the middle of 2000s, internet got mainstream. so they were
Hmm.
able to hook it up. I mean, able to hook it up. Other than that, there was a few PC games like Quake and Marathon that people played online.
Yeah.
But then consoles are the mainstream gaming way to game. So once they get online in a big way, it changed everything.
Um, and again, and along with all this, like the Wii comes out in 2006, but then it's like 2007 is election year, and 2008 Obama gets in, and his era starts. So there's still all these like major changes happening, not in 2010, like right before that, 5 years before that. Um,
Yeah. So
the last one is 2015 to 2025, which is the year that I think the era we're in now, where Gamergate starts in 2014, SJWs start to emerge. It's the era of the culture war. Is
I don't know.
2015
It was.
is the
I don't know. The SJWs were happening when we were in high school.
well a little bit, but they start to get worse and worse
Well. They're
around this
just.
time.
Well, they exploded. They exploded.
Yeah,
It's like I would say the last 2 years of Barry.
yeah. So the end of Obama happens around 2015. It's 2016 kind of changes everything. It's the beginning of Trump. Um, and too the use of social media kind of explodes as well.
Yeah, yeah. It definitely
Especially
happened. It definitely happened. It really exploded when we got out of high school.
yeah, and it's also like it becomes more and more important for marketing.
Yeah,
More and more people are there's an explosion of people making YouTube videos and playing video games online.
yeah. The first big one, which I mean, you really can categorize that with, James Rolfe. 2009, 2010 is when he first really started uploading a lot.
Yeah.
Well, YouTube gaming. I mean, it was its own separate thing for quite a while. Yogscast and all that started 2010 to 2012. It was growing a lot.
Hmm.
If you want to hyper-analyze that way, I don't know. We can't. So this era, what is it known for? Comic book movies coming out every single week.
This is definitely the comic book era.
Grossed me out. Coming every week.
Mm, yeah.
Have to listen to Danny. I just
It
called him
is.
out.
And after Avengers, I don't think it's going to last 5 more years.
It's
I mean,
not.
it
It's
might
not.
it'll probably linger on, but this is definitely going to end
And
in.
remember when it was first announced years ago? I told Danny it's going to be the end. It really is.
Did,
I mean, there's going to be a couple that come out after it, but it's going to peter out fast. Well,
oh
well,
yeah.
well. DC has already said they don't have a universe anymore for movies. They
X
announced last
and
week.
yeah, and X-Men is kind of has a kind of a final looking movie to it as well. Uh yeah, I don't think
It's not going to last
by
much longer. So
by 2005 I don't think there'll be any comic book movies
this
left.
this decade's the rise of vaporwave.
That's true.
I don't know if it's going to linger throughout the next era. I don't know. I really don't know if it's going to.
I
It's hard
hope
to
it
say.
does because I love it. But
Well,
uh,
you were hating it when I was sending it to you earlier in the decade, so you just hopping
I
on
don't
the you
I
just
don't
hopping on
know
the
what I
bandwagon.
don't know what you're
You're
talking
just hopping on
about.
the
I
bandwagon.
don't remember that.
You're just hopping on the
I don't
bandwagon.
I
I
don't
sent it to you
remember.
and you just said, "Oh, it's
No,
a techno
Future
crap."
Future Funk came like two or
Oh,
three
shut up,
years
Future
after
Funk.
the
It was
early stuff.
Vaporwave was starting. Vaporwave started.
Okay,
I sent it
whatever.
to you.
But
Then you said
you
a
know
techno crap is what you said.
Future Funk is different. You know that's now the mainstream of what
It's a
everybody
different
thinks about
genre. I don't
Vaporwave.
care.
The beginning of Vaporwave is way more
I don't
abstract
care.
and
I sent you Vaporwave. You said it's techno
what
crap.
did you say? What did you send me?
The exact song. I can go try and find it on SoundCloud. I probably
You
did
sent me
way,
the
way back.
first album with the Sega like Echo the Dolphin art on it. Did you
Um,
send me Floral Shop?
I sent you a song. I sent you a song or two from those albums. The one with that head on it too.
Okay, well then I didn't appreciate it at the
A lot of
time.
the stuff,
I'm
a lot of the
sorry.
stuff I sent you to was Vaporwave being on SoundCloud.
Okay, well I don't,
Remember, he said it was techno crap, is what he said.
But you would send me a lot of techno, and that has a digital sound to it. So it just kind of blended together in my mind. I don't like techno.
I know, but I'm
By the
I'm just
way,
calling you out. I'm calling you out.
techno 95,
I'm saying,
2005.
but it started the first half of this decade.
Would you
And
say
it's getting
techno
big.
started in 95?
Um, Techno, I would say started with in the 70s. Grandmaster Flash in the mid 80s has a song that is techno.
But when it's like,
Scorpio.
okay, but what we know is like
Look,
most of techno
getting
with
big. Oh, 90s is when it started getting big.
95. Then it ends in 2005.
I'm not into that era of techno, so I can't really say.
Okay.
I'm not gonna try to claim it. I
I was
first
gonna
started
add.
hearing it.
I was gonna add two outrage clicks. That begins around 2015. The media knows they're dying. TV knows it's dying, so it's getting more and more desperate.
And getting angry.
Yeah, and if Trump wins, he leaves in 2004. When Trump leaves, that is definitely the end of an era, for sure.
Whenever Trump leaves the
So
presidency.
if Trump wins and he leaves in 2004, I mean Trump leaving is the end of something.
Oh, it is, yeah. Well, Trump leaving
So
is it's gonna be the end of it's the it's the beginning of some kind of definite end.
yes, so the huge definite end right in the middle of 2024. So
Well, yeah, if he gets reelected, we'll see.
so
I don't know who else did.
there's
Well, I did forget to mention wrestling in the 90s. That's something big. You didn't pay attention to it, I know. For me and Danny though, wrestling.
you didn't pay attention to it, I know.
Well, it's not what you're into. I'm sorry. It wasn't. I don't know
Well,
how I'm on.
it was very underground in the 80s, wasn't
It wasn't very underground, but it came out. And then we got the 90s was wrestling. I got the wrestling video games where I
it? Well, when
slap
did
around people as Stone Cold Steve Austin and The
well
Undertaker.
did WWE start right in
Well,
the
that
beginning
64
of the
games is
90s?
how they punched. They did karate chops. They didn't animate their fists. They did karate chops on the N64 when they punched
Yeah.
each other. They slapped each other in the face, basically. It was funny as hell.
When was the first WWE?
I could look it up. Well, they actually changed their name. They actually change it as they go along.
I can't even I can't even
I remember the WWF.
let me tell you something.
Yeah,
Okay. I've hated wrestling my entire life. I think it's the most cringe form of entertainment I've ever seen.
it's funny. It's so
I
goofy.
am not I do not find it funny. I do not find it entertaining. I don't even find it goofy. I find it completely cringe. I look at old clips from wrestling stuff. I can't even finish it.
You
I
should
think
watch
it's the
some.
most
You should watch some
cringe stuff
Japanese
I've ever
wrestling.
watched.
You should watch some Japanese wrestling. It's even funnier and all over the top. They actually breathe fire and shit.
Okay, well,
It's
well,
funny.
that's
It's
I'll
super.
probably
It's
like it then
super
because
funny.
it's
The shit they
Japanese.
do
But
in that is insane.
this is my crackpot theory, everybody. That the biggest cultural shifts are in the middle of the decades. The biggest artistic shifts are in the middle, and the biggest technological shifts are
What about
usually in the middle.
animation?
Animation, a little less so.
A little
But
less so. It starts and ends right at the beginning of decades. It's crazy how that works. The only real exception is 45 because of the war in technology from animation. And I still disagree. I still think there's a clear defining lines as you change into the actual zeros.
do we want to talk about anime real quick?
What I don't know. It
While we're
started.
done?
It started in the. That's the well. Toonami happened in. Toonami started in '97. I think I saw. I don't know. I just looked it up and I forgot it already. '97 is Toonami. However, before that, it was on local channels. Like
Hmm.
I actually saw the first Macross. It was called Robotech over here in America. I saw that. I remember seeing that. I saw Pokemon. What did I see? It was a WB that carried it, I think. I remember the
Again,
first
this
episode of Pokemon I saw it like ultra early in the morning, and it was the episode where he fought Lieutenant Surge. That was actually before the games came out. It was so early in the morning. I was just up so early in the morning. It was like 5 a.m. or something. I saw that episode.
this wasn't on. Was this on WB?
I don't know because it was just. It's because when I got the game later, I suddenly realized, oh, that thing I saw really early in the morning one day was Pokemon. It was before the games came out. I saw it
The show really was before the games? That can't be.
in America,
Well,
not in Japan.
that's another.
Well,
That's
you have to realize Leaf Green of Pokemon Green, which didn't come to America, came out years before in Japan. It was like the prototype essentially.
isn't there a huge crash of the anime industry in the middle of the 2000s as well? Doesn't it crash with the recession?
Oh well, yeah, it definitely affected it. Yeah, there's still anime being made.
No, I mean distribution, American distribution companies like ADV, like they crash at a certain point in the middle of the decade.
That I don't know. That to me, that really happened with the rise of the internet, but mostly because it was the rise of the internet.
Fan subs and all
So
that.
it just changed.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't crash with fan subs. They crashed with digital distribution. A lot of them just a lot of them were owned by bigger companies, so they just gave up anime. It's not really a crash; it's just companies pulling out.
Well, it's considered a crash. I mean,
guess
again, nobody wanted to buy DVDs every few months.
I know. They still do in Japan. They buy
Oh.
they buy almost $100 Blu-rays, and there's like 3 to 4 episodes, if that, on each one.
That's that Otaku mom money right there.
Yeah. Like,
That's
well, you
those
know,
deep
you know,
those
well,
deep
you know,
deep,
no,
pocketbooks of the Otaku mom.
you know what
Otaku
they
mom.
were doing? They were actually importing ours. They were actually importing ours for a while. They
Yeah.
were importing ours for a while and just turning off the English subtitles because it was
Wow.
way cheaper. They were getting like 10 episodes, 8 to 10 episodes per disc, and it was like less than half the price. So now when you buy a DVD, they actually you can't turn off the English subs, but they probably still do it because it still saves you so much money if you
Yeah.
actually are a collector.
Yeah. Anime has its. I don't know all the changes on that in that era, but definitely 80s anime, all those incredible, like beautifully animated movies like Akira and
Well,
and
I won't claim to
Ghost
know
in the
exact
Shell.
decades, but I mean, as you watch it, you can see a definite shift in the art style
Hmm.
every decade. I
I
don't
do.
I won't claim to know the exact day because you can go on anachart.net and you can actually go back to the 50s and 60s and look at the seasons. If you really wanted to explore it, you can.
There's a huge shift after Evangelion. That Evangelion completely changes anime. I saw a video of it on YouTube. Talks about the influence of it. All the shows start getting more serious and experimental after Eva, and that is mid '90s. That starts happening.
Now, I mean, there's tons of shows that are made with like teenagers who have to control robots and are emotional.
Yeah, yeah, and
Well, Darling in the Franxx just aired last year, and it's the same thing.
I didn't even know that Cowboy Bebop was even because most anime was to sell toys. It's like make these robots and planes to sell toys. And that's how Cowboy Bebop started. I didn't even know
It
that.
was true for a long time, yeah.
The guy was like, as long as it has spaceships, just do whatever you want.
There definitely is still shows made to sell toys.
And all this new experimental anime starts in the mid '90s, starts coming to America in the mid '90s, and then it kind of slows down or ends in 2005 and 2006.
Well, it was only just picking up, really, as far as America goes.
There is kind of a lull
It just
period
kept
though,
picking
right?
out. I don't know. It just slowly picked up to me, is what it seemed like from my viewpoint.
Well, we went to Anime Boston, and that guy was saying that anime sales went down, but anime convention attendance went up.
Yeah, well, fan subs.
But there is a point where people are like, oh, everybody likes anime again. Don't you remember that?
I don't know. I just never stopped watching it. The thing is,
Yeah.
the thing is about me. As much as I love anime, I'm weird. I I never go online and talk about it with people because I hate them. I despise the anime fan base. I hate you all. You make me angry. You're cringe, and you're a bunch of big degenerates.
So some of you are super cringe, I have to
I
say.
know. That's the thing. I can't stand to go on like an anime message board and talk to them. They're they're disgusted. I saw some guy on 4chan once say like, "There's 40% of us who just despise the rest of you so much that we hate ourselves too. We will we will destroy ourselves to destroy you."
Are you talking about just like
Speaking in
sexual
general,
deviancy?
yeah, well, that kind of stuff. The
Well,
way
there's
they
like the social
act.
awkwardness. Like they're not, yeah, they're not people you want to hang out with that much. I mean, I don't want to sound elitist or anything. It's just you when you think about cringe.
Well, I have to. Well, I listen. If I hop onto our anime right now, if you want to talk about a show, all you're going to hear about is who is best girl, and then somebody's going to post some lewd picture of them, and they're gonna spout the cringy memes. You can't have an actual discussion about the show.
I mean, there were so many times you wanted to know my waifu, though. You kept berating me about
Because
my
it
what
because
was
it
what
bothered
my
you.
waifu
Because
was.
it bothered you.
Yeah, but you had your waifus that you
Yeah,
talked with John about,
yeah.
right?
It's
You
actually
talked in depth. There
it
was
was John
in
who
depth
talked more than
waifu
that.
discussions going on.
John was well, John was a furry. He had to bring a so he was even more of a degenerate.
I'll never forget that swinging tail at Anime Boston.
I'll never forget it.
This with that sweatshirt walking down the aisle.
We stopped going to Anime Boston because I was only angered by it, and then on top of it, it became so crowded you couldn't even get into the panels anyway.
Yeah.
So we're gonna wrap up.
I mean, I've always appreciated anime as an art,
I do. That's why I
as an
like
art
it. I
form.
like it. Well,
Yeah.
that's why I like it. Well, as we said, animation in the West fell so bad in the 2000s. What did you have left? I mean, what did you have left?
There is a lot of
You had
really
to go to
great anime,
anime.
and that
You
that is
had
a
to go to
great
anime.
era of anime.
You had to go for that. And still to this day, if you want, I mean, if you want a more adult subject matter in animation, you're not going to get it over here. Avatar: The Last Airbender is a huge exception among animation in the West.
Late '90s is Princess Mononoke, Spirited Away. It's some of Ghibli's best years. Is in that era
And
too.
then if you want big budget traditional animation, they're still the only ones. I mean, a lot of their shows is like, I mean, if you watch it, it's like it's almost movie quality animation. Some of the shows that come out.
Yeah.
Dororo right now is unbelievable animation and production value. It's on TV too, just a regular show.
Yeah, I would say that this is also a really good era of anime. Um,
So I'm not going to claim to know Japan's ups and downs, ups and downs and eras. So I'm not going to try and
there
teach
is,
it.
I mean, there is the '90s crash. There's city pop um, in Japan where there's a big economic boom in the '80s. So you see the animation reflect that, and you see the music reflect that. Uh,
Well, city pop is new wave essentially. It's a bit
City pop
different.
is kind of a mix
It's a
of a
bit
lot of
different.
things. It's expiring of the whole vaporwave era. It's kind of like long lost music uh, that people are just like kind of remixing.
So it's
This
hard to
this
say what
K
this
this is
era.
K-pop era too. 2015. I know like there's some K-pop before that, but it really starts getting big right now. Starts getting big in 2015, so that's another and I don't know how much longer people will be paying attention to K-pop, but I don't expect it will go past 2025. So that's another era. You could call this 10 years of K-pop having some influence, and we're in the middle of it.
So, should we wrap it up, Race?
Yeah,
Been going
did
on
I
for
do
an
no?
hour and a half.
Is my theory still retarded?
Yeah, it is.
Sound off in the comments below if you don't think my theory is.
I still don't see it. I still prove
I
it
feel-
every time with
I had
with
tons
stuff
of evidence.
appearing.
I still made some good points.
I showed you all
There's
kinds
still
of stuff.
some shift.
I still showed you the
There's
big
some-
shift and
There's
what the
still-
decade's known for.
There's lots of big
It
shifts
started
in the
beginning.
middle, and you didn't counter a lot of them. You can go back and listen. You didn't counter a lot of them.
Well, a fad or two appears throughout any era.
I showed a lot of
proved to you
shifts
that
in the
stuff
middle.
stuff appeared right at the beginning of the era every time.
There are
appeared.
technological and political shifts in the middle of eras that is fundamentally changing the culture, the pop culture, and the art, the music.
I don't know. I still didn't see it, man, with the music too much. The '60s is its own thing that came and went, though. Very sudden, 5 years for those '60s.
Yeah, but there's still a lot of. I mean, it's still lingering on into the '70s. It's kind of every. Well, okay,
barely.
we're repeating ourselves barely, I guess. Yeah.
So we stream Thursdays at around 8 o'clock if Race feels like being here.
Either 8 or 9.
Whenever Race feels like showing up.
We could change it to 9. It's whatever.
We're gonna start somewhere around there, since nobody listens anyway.
Yeah, listen. You weren't here in the beginning. You didn't get to say anything in the chat. That's just we record the episodes, and that's just the way it is.
All right, we'll see.
If the show gets popular, then you'll be in the chat one day.
Next week we're gonna play and review Corey Red and Precise's album Resistance is Futile, the greatest hip hop album ever. I am not gonna let Race delay it anymore. We're gonna do it next week.
Okay.
Next week. I'm gonna play it too. I don't give a shit. I'm gonna play it, then we're gonna review it.
Okay, we'll commit to that.
We're gonna play it. Probably the first half. It's a really long album. We'll do the first half next week. I'm gonna play the actual tracks.
What? Don't you want to go track by track?
Well, we are.
But we could do the first one episode just about what we feel about the album in general, right?
Fine if you want to. We're gonna play the tracks and go through them.
Okay.
We can't turn every song into an hour anyway.
Well, we could turn every song into a video.
We can.
Because that will give us favor with the almighty algorithm.
It will on YouTube. So
Yes.
we'll see you next week.
Please notice us, algorithm. Please like and comment to get us noticed by the almighty algorithm.